I'm about to desperately jump the shark on topic. So just before I do that, I'm going to summarize why I'm here. I moved here originally in the year 2000 for a job. Moved away again in about 2004, in part because of the Austin cultural stereotypes about slackers. I really wanted to be somewhere that matched my sense of energy and motivation. But I came back in 2011, in part because every time I visited Austin in the interim, somebody was incredibly nice to me, or just really funny, or just cool for no reason. And that was something that was important to me. I can work from anywhere, so really my reasons, like a lot of people were talking about, are personal reasons for being here in Austin. I want to be part of a community that energizes me, that nurtures me. And that slacker, stereotype isn't really a thing as much anymore. I think it's dated at this point. Here's what I actually want to talk about today. Totally different topic. And I have to push both buttons at once, and this one doesn't work as well. Okay, success. Okay, so I'm the creative director of Tiger Style. We made these 2 games, and then we recently announced that we're working on this game. And recently we've been in this phase of development called, the research phase. Basically, it's my favorite phase. And I wanted to take time today to talk about why I like this phase and think about how it creates inspiration, which I think is a really important part of game design. Every story from real life has some truth behind it, and I like to find those magic of those stories from real life. So here's the research topic. It's whirlpools, or more properly, maelstrom. Where does this story come from? I was curious, so I did some research. Pretty awesome. One more. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Okay. So this is a 16th century map of the Nordic area. It's by a Swedish chronicler named Rose Monkowski. And if you zoom in here, you can see the coast of Norway. And along with some other fantastic illustrations, there's this whirlpool that's sucking a vessel to its doom. A giant whirlpool show up in a lot of stories, including Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Edgar Allan Poe's Descent into the Maelstrom, and also sometimes in games like World of Warcraft, or closer to my heart, the Ultima series had whirlpools. And this idea of a giant swirling dent in the ocean that's even larger than your ship's pretty amazing, but is there any basis in fact? Well, the area depicted in that map is the Lofoten Islands off the coast of Norway. They're string islands about 125 miles long, and they're the site of the most prominent legends about the Maelstrom. There's a Jesuit scientist named Athanasius Kircher, and he speculated that there was an underground cavern that passed beneath both of Norway and Sweden, and the Maelstrom was the result of water coursing through this underground cavern, basically like the ocean was going down a hole, like your bathtub water goes down a drain, following this red arrow from one side to the other. But a more reasonable guy, who strangely was a poet, his name was Peter Dass, and he was also from the 17th century. He had a more realistic appraisal, which is that he was noting that the entire, oops, this one did not work, oh my God, okay. He was noting that the entire fjord basin to the east of the chain of islands had to fill and empty twice a day with the tides passing over an area of shallow sea depth and through a pinch point at the end of the island chain. And so essentially he was right, the modern scientific understanding of whirlpools is that they're caused by colliding sea currents, especially during tides. This thing on the right is a computer model. Is it animating? Well, it's animating for me, guys, and it looks really cool. Let's see what happens if I do this. No. Okay, pretend that has really awesome moving arrows. Okay. So it's a computer model of the Lofoten area with attention given to tidal currents, terrain, sea depth, and drag due to the seafloor resistance. So basically, due to extreme tidal conditions, there's a standing 1-foot difference in the sea levels between the east and west sides of the Lofoten Islands, and it's also noteworthy that they have the world's most significant elevated temperature anomaly there. Even though they're well within the Arctic Circle, the average temperature is above freezing all year round due to the Gulf Stream, so it's like a prime location for these kind of meteorological phenomena. Now, in practice, this doesn't always amount to much, so this is a photo of the average maelstrom at the actual location from the maps we've been looking at. This is a rocky, windswept area, so it's already very dangerous for ships. And on a normal day, during the tidal shifts, the maelstrom just looks like fiercely jumbled ocean currents, but on really bad occasions, it might look like this. So there are reports of whirlpools that are up to 30 feet across and 12 feet in depth, with currents reaching speeds of 17 miles an hour. And people report that the entire ocean looks like a whitewater river during these occasions. And obviously, that would be dangerous to ancient vessels, and hence it spawned these legends. But it's also dangerous to modern vessels. They make it impossible to steer, these whirlpools do. So you basically just have to sit there and wait them out. And 12 feet might not seem like a very deep hole, but if you are in icy, rocky oceans beset by turbulent rapids and you're surrounded by 12-foot waves in a circle on every side, you might think a little differently about whether it seems like a large number or not. And this is actually the second largest maelstrom location in the world. The largest is also in Norway, not that far away. It produces even more dangerous currents, but they don't visibly show on the surface nearly as much. And the third largest one is in Scotland off the coast, and it's very similar. It's got that, it's caused by tides going in and out. In this case, they go over this underwater pinnacle, which causes a standing wave on the surface. It can be up to 15 feet tall. And there's a whirlpool on the other side, which can be heard from 10 miles away. And so there's an actual story about George Orwell when he was like writing the novel 1984. He nearly drowned here. He was like out boating and he got caught, not just in a large central waterfall, but there was kind of like a little like ring of smaller ones around it, not waterfall, whirlpool. And so he managed to escape, but not after like the outboard motor from their vessel like gave out and fell off the boat, and somehow they rowed themselves to this rocky, like small like island essentially and survived. Pretty crazy. And so there's this other story of this very same one where these researchers like took a mannequin and tied a depth gauge to it, and they just like threw it into the middle of the whirlpool, and it disappeared in moments, and it registered a depth of 200 feet, and it's because of what divers call this like basically an underwater waterfall phenomenon. Okay, so do whirlpools really exist? Well, they don't wander around the oceans and they can't suck large ships into the depths, but there are powerful swirling vortices with fierce currents that appear periodically around fixed locations and can flip smaller vessels and suck swimmers hundreds of feet underwater. So there's some point relevant to research here that there's like a truth is stranger than fiction kind of a thing, or if not stranger, then maybe like more textured and nuanced. And to me, more believable too, and so therefore more impactful because it aligns more with the truths that we've already learned about the world, whereas exaggeration tends to smack a falsehood. So one reason to do research is because the archetypal stories we've been fed our whole lives are often bland and lacking in character compared to what's true in the real world. So moving on, let's go through a couple of topics real quickly. In Zimbabwe, there's this legend about a tribe of ostrich people, which came in part from travelers who had sometimes come across these two-toed tracks in the jungle. And you're laughing, but this turned out to be completely and totally true. The tribe is called the Vedoma, and they're a highly reclusive tribe that has a high incidence of a genetic anomaly that fuses their toes together. And within their tribe, it's not considered a handicap because it, for example, helps them climb trees better, which is important. And one of the things I've learned that there's really no end to compelling stories that no one has ever heard of, which makes it kind of a shame that video games are so often falling back on things like orcs and space marines and the standard fare we discuss all the time. So people tend to think, including myself, that dinosaurs must be the largest thing ever to roam the earth. But no, the blue whale still exists today, and it's by far the largest thing ever to roam the earth. It's so enormous, in fact, that you would have to line up 2.5 municipal buses in single file to equal its length. So if you can imagine scuba diving, having one of these things go past you, it's kind of crazy. But depending on how you want to measure it, the actual largest organism might be this fungus, which lives largely just under the surface of a wooded area of Oregon. It covers 2,200 acres, and it's estimated to be maybe 2,400 years old. And fungi, they don't follow the same rules about aging and death as other life forms, the more complex life forms. So this specimen has lived without significant competition and was just been able to grow like unchecked for a long, long time. So these are selenite crystals. They get to be 50 feet long, 4 feet in diameter, and they're found by chance all in the same chamber about 1,000 feet underground in Nayesa mine in the southern Mexican state of Chihuahua. And what happened is there was this intermingling of surface water with water from the depths, and that was trapped in these flooded chambers for thousands of years, which allows these crystals to precipitate out of the resulting solution. And miners were exploring the cave and drained out all the water so they could explore, and then they found these crystals. This is just one of the geological research items that inspired us when we were making the game Waking Mars that we worked on. We had similar crystal chambers that was at the heart of the game's system. So, and that's just kind of one of the easiest examples of how to apply research to game development, just sort of like chopper lifting, copying, pasting locations and facts from real life into your game. But in my experience, the best research isn't always applied so directly, and there's value to just becoming steeped in the culture, the knowledge, surrounding yourself with the texture and the details of the subject matter you're working with, so you can more naturally apply authentic details. So you have readily available intuition for what's true. And to be clear, my belief is that you don't have to use only true details, but creating from a place of knowledge often makes a difference between a work that feels like substantial versus one that feels like a little bit too light and disposable. So in terms of process, what I find works best is to start with some very clearly relevant topic like, hey, secret societies, or the geophysical history of Mars, or how life evolved on Earth, genealogy. Then I kind of let my curiosity drive from there. And I try to dig into why these topics and these things I'm learning about are actually important to me. Like, usually there's some like deeper human truth about why something is amazing about this like dimple in the otherwise relatively flat ocean, or this idea about a legendary tribe that turns out to actually be true in reality. Like there's something fundamentally human that excites our curiosity about those things. And lastly, not only should you just get off, Wikipedia is a great starting point, but you should get off Wikipedia and try to get into real life in general. So we're working, doing research on Intercompany right now. This is our research phase, and we're posting a bunch of stuff to our blog, including things about secret societies and so forth. So check it out if that sounds interesting to you. Thank you very much for your time.